Our president is gone, but fear remains. That is the paradox of Venezuela today. In Caracas, there are no fireworks, no crowds, no public celebrations, because when Nicolás Maduro was seized and flown to the United States, power did not vanish. It stayed. It shifted and it watched. I'm Fareed Zakaria, and what you are seeing is not the end of a regime. It is the beginning of uncertainty. Some Venezuelans feel relief, quiet relief. Others feel anger, humiliation, defiance. Most feel something deeper, fear of what comes next. History teaches us something brutal. Removing a leader is simple. Living without him is not. If you want to understand why Venezuelans are whispering instead of celebrating, stay with me, share this analysis. Because moments like this decide nations. To understand this fear, we must step back and ask a harder question. What was really taken and what was left behind? Let's be clear about what this moment is and what it is not. Nicolás Maduro is gone, but the system that sustained him is still standing. Power in Venezuela was never just one man. It was a network, political loyalists, security forces, armed civilian groups, economic control. That is why fear did not disappear with Maduro's departure. It deepened. An interim president stepped in, not an outsider, not a reformer, but Maduro's closest lieutenant. Police patrol the streets. Journalists are detained. The message is quiet but unmistakable. Order remains. Obedience is expected. For supporters of Maduro, this feels like humiliation. For opponents, it feels unfinished. And for most citizens, it feels dangerous, because when leadership changes without the system breaking, uncertainty grows. And uncertainty is where violence often lives. To understand why Venezuela reached this fragile moment, we need to go further back. Before the fear, before the raids, before the collapse, we need to understand how this system was built in the first place. To understand this moment, we have to rewind the clock. Not to last week, not to the seizure, but to the system that made it possible. Venezuela did not collapse overnight. It followed a cycle. Power was centralized. Institutions were weakened. Loyalty was rewarded. Dissent was punished. Under Chavismo, the state became everything. The employer, the distributor, the gatekeeper, food, medicine, opportunity. When the economy faltered, control tightened. Shortages were not just failures. They were tools. People depended on the system that was failing them. And those at the top learned how to survive inside the chaos. Over time, a parallel reality emerged. For the elite, abundance. For everyone else, scarcity. Millions left the country. Those who stayed learned to adapt or to stay silent. This is why removing a leader does not undo the damage. Because the damage lives in habits, in fear, in expectations, and when pressure builds inside a system like this, it does not release gently. It explodes. That explosion would come suddenly, and it would change everything. It did not begin with celebration. It began with violence. Dozens were killed in the operation that seized Nicolás Maduro, among them members of foreign security forces. Lives lost before a new chapter even began. This was not a clean transition. It was a rupture. Maduro was taken from his compound, put on a plane, flown to the United States to face charges that had long hovered over his rule. For some Venezuelans, this was justice. Long delayed, finally visible. For others, it was shock. A president removed with stunning ease. A nation watching, powerless. Images mattered. Maduro waving after arriving in the US, alive, defiant. To his supporters, it was a call to stand tall. To his opponents, a promise of accountability. But beneath the symbolism, something darker emerged. Fear tightened its grip. Because when power is taken by force, the question is never just who is gone, it is who remains. And in Venezuela, the system did not collapse. It braced itself. If you want to understand why this crisis did not end with that plane ride, stay with me. Because the real story lies beneath the surface, and that is where we must look next. What remained after Maduro was taken is the part most people miss. Power in Venezuela was never vertical. It was layered. At the top, a leader, beneath him, loyalists, security forces, political operators, armed civilian groups. When Maduro disappeared, those layers did not fall. They tightened. The interim president was not a bridge. She was continuity, the same networks, the same incentives, the same fear. This is how systems protect themselves. They adapt faster than people expect. Control does not always require speeches. It requires presence. Police on the streets, soldiers at corners, armed civilians near supermarkets, journalists detained, questions discouraged, silence rewarded. Economics played its role too. Prices rose within days. Basic goods became scarcer. Uncertainty turned into inflation. This is the hidden mechanism. When authority feels threatened, it squeezes harder, not to reform, but to survive. And for ordinary people, survival becomes the only goal. But pressure like this never stays contained. It builds and it looks for release. That release was coming. The second crisis hit hard. Suddenly, unexpectedly, just when the streets seemed to quiet, the pressure reached its breaking point. People began to disappear, not just in the shadows, but in the light of day. The disappearances were real. The fear was palpable. At first, it was a murmur. Then, a ripple of violence. Protests broke out. Repression followed. The government had learned from its past. It was faster this time. Opposition leaders arrested. Demonstrations crushed before they grew. Loyalists tightened their grip. For those who had dared to dream of change, the dream died. In the chaos, the public divided. Some called for peace, for stability, for the pain to stop. Others called for more, for revolution, for justice. And in the streets, fear hung like a shadow. It was the fear of retribution, the fear that nothing had really changed. Because when the second wave of violence hit, it did not just target the leaders, it targeted the people. The only question that remained, would it end here? Or would the streets burn again? The real impact of these crises, however, is not what happens in the streets. It is what happens inside the hearts and minds of the people. For years, Venezuelans lived with constant fear. Fear of hunger, fear of violence, fear of silence. Now, that fear had evolved. It was no longer just about surviving. It was about waiting for the next wave of repression, waiting for the next loss. In the midst of this, you can hear the quiet voices. Marcelo, a student in Caracas, speaks of his hope, but not publicly. He knows better. Rosa, an older woman, clings to her support for Maduro, even as she fears the world outside. But what about the millions who left? Those who fled the country in search of safety and opportunity, they are watching. Some hope to return. Some hope for a change in the government. Others know the reality. Venezuela may never be the same again. The question is, what happens when people lose faith in their leaders and in their system? This is not just about politics. It is about survival. It is about trust. And trust, once broken, is never easily rebuilt. This is the real battle, not just for power, but for the soul of a nation. What happens next is a question without a clear answer. The future of Venezuela is not one story. It is three. The first possibility is the best case scenario, a stable transition, a new government, perhaps led by a democratic figure, a fresh start. Under this scenario, Venezuela would begin to rebuild, a gradual return to normalcy. the economy stabilizes, the people return. This would be a new dawn for the country, a chance for redemption. But there is also a second possibility, a compromise, a slow transition where power is shared between factions, the scars of the past still visible, the wounds unhealed. In this scenario, the country limps forward. There are attempts at reform, but the old system still casts a shadow. And then, the darkest possibility, a deepening crisis, a full breakdown of order, further violence, a civil conflict that would only leave devastation in its wake. This is the danger that lurks. And this, my friends, is why uncertainty reigns. Whatever happens, the world is watching, because Venezuela's future will impact not just its people, but the entire region. We cannot predict the future, but we can prepare for it. And the question remains, which path will Venezuela take? The truth is, we are standing at the edge of a moment that could change everything. Venezuela's story is not over yet, but its next chapter is about to be written. For the people of Venezuela, there is a deep, unsettling truth. There is no easy way forward. But in times like these, we must ask ourselves, what will define us? Will it be our capacity for hope or our willingness to endure? The journey ahead will not be smooth. It will be rocky. It will be dangerous. But it will also be an opportunity, a chance for a new beginning, a chance to rewrite the future. The world is watching. The people of Venezuela are watching. And history will ask, did you rise or did you fall? This is the moment. This is the turning point. What will you choose? This is the question we must all answer together. The future of Venezuela is not just Venezuela's future. It is ours too. Stay with me. Share this conversation, because what happens next will matter for all of us. This is not the end. It's just the beginning.